And now you're turning the page to page 24 and we're looking at chords, which is when you're playing more than one note together. When you're reading a chord on music, right hand or left hand, treble or bass, always get to the bottom note first. Always look and read and find the bottom note of the chord. So the bottom note, just show you to the screen here. So those two notes there form a chord. The bottom note there is C. Those two notes form a chord. The bottom note is D. The bottom note of each of these chords is C, middle C. Okay, and in the left hand, if we look at Fanfare, the bottom note of that chord is your new C note. It's on the second space of the stave, and that is note C in the bass clef. Okay, we didn't find these chords, so it might be worth finding those as well in the left hand. The bottom note of that one is F. That's the fourth line on the stave. So you always find that note first, and then usually the next notes above it will follow by themselves. You'll find them by themselves, if that makes sense. Makes sense more as I show you, I think. So if we play through each exercise. So the first one is playing the two notes C and E, which then form the chord C and E. Okay, and again you must make sure that this middle finger bends under so that you tuck that nail underneath. All right, remember, or be careful to make sure that you lift the last E. Lift it, because you need to play it afresh in the chord. Okay, moving along, it's D and F this time, really bending those fingers. Lift the last F because you need to play it in the chord. And then we've got three notes here, C, E and G. They're all skips. Lift the E, play the C and the E, and then the three notes, C, E and G. So again, I've started with my bottom note being C, and then we finish just with steps between D and E and a skip to finish on the C. Okay, then it says now play these chords. So the first one, C is at the bottom, so I make sure my thumb is on C, and the third finger that's written above in the fingering refers to the above note, which is the E. So the fingering written on the music refers to the notes in the same order. So the next one along here, it says 2 and 4. Well, that's 2 and that's 4, and the bottom note of the chord is D, and the upper note is the F. So the fingering does fit. Then the next chord is a 3-note chord, so we make sure the thumb goes to the lowest note, which is C, the E goes to the middle note, E, and the 5 goes to the highest note, G, so play those three together. Okay, now moving to the bass clef, playing this exercise, starting with middle C, skipping to A, lift the C and then play the A and the C to make the chord. Then it's B and G. Lift the B at the end to play it in the chord. 2, 3, and then C, A and F. Lift the F and play all three of those notes to make your final chord. Okay? Then it says, and play these chords. So let's find these chords. So again, the third finger's at the bottom in the fingering, and so the bottom note is A. The upper note is middle C, which is where the thumb is written. Then we go to 4 and 2, which is already on G at the bottom, B above it. And then the last chord, F, is at the bottom there with the 5, then E is above it, and then C is the top one. So that's those three notes making that chord. Okay, and then the last thing you're going to do this week is fanfare. So again, the lowest note of the first chord in the bass, the left hand, is our new C note. Then the third finger's on the next space, which is E. The thumb is on the next space, which is G. So the spaces there are C, E and G in that order, C, E and G. So that makes your first chord. The right hand, the lowest note is middle C, which says the thumb. The third finger is on the next line, which is E, and the fifth finger is on the next line, which is G. It's really important that you start to make the connections with these lines and spaces and what the letters are that belong to those lines and spaces. It is a question of just knuckling down and learning it. So let's start from the beginning. Hold for 2 beats. See how I'm letting the keys up? Okay. Then we have D and F, 4 and 2, and the same in the right hand, D and F, and then back to your first chords all together. Really bend your fingers. Okay, you can relax the arms a little bit when you're playing chords. They can go a bit heavy, but don't let the fingers go flat like that. Keep the fingers bent. And when you've got to play repeated chords or even repeated notes, you must let the keys up in order for them to go down. The danger is it gets stuck, and that's possible on a piano, that you can get the key stuck. Not so easy to show it on a digital piano, but on a traditional piano, the hammer can get stuck between where it rests and the string, so actually the note won't do anything. Look. Unless I let it up, and then it will play. But you must make sure that you let the key right up and your hand just comes away from the key a little bit. Don't get your hand stuck like this. Relax it a little bit. Lift it, lift it. Okay, so remember that little lift underneath your hand as well.